They don't look like geniuses. That's the first mistake people make. You expect high IQ to come dressed in lab coats, quoting quantum physics, or scribbling formulas on glass walls. But that's not intelligence. That's performance. A show for the crowd. The people with the real intellectual power, the dangerous kind, they're usually quiet. They listen more than they talk. And when they do talk, it's surgical, precision. No fluff. They don't crave attention. They crave leverage. Let me tell you something uncomfortably. Most people confuse loudness with intelligence because we live in a world that rewards noise over nuance. But intelligence, real intelligence, is strategic, and strategy doesn't announce itself. When Napoleon was still an unknown soldier, he had one advantage most of his peers couldn't faking. He observed everything. He memorized terrain. He noticed hesitation in a commander's voice. He understood timing, not because he had a crystal ball, but because he trained himself to pay attention to what others ignore. And that's the first habit of high IQ minds. They watch before they move. In a room full of impulsive thinkers, the smartest man is the one who waits 5 seconds longer. Why? Because he's gathering. Information is the currency of power, and attention is the investment that buys it. You think it's impressive when someone answers quickly. But the real killer in the room is the one who delays just enough to let everyone else reveal themselves. It's not about knowing everything. It's about knowing what matters and ignoring the rest. This is the same principle Kissinger used when he walked into negotiations. He didn't interrupt. He didn't overshare. He let silence do the work. And in that silence, people exposed their fears, their weaknesses, their greed. High IQ isn't speed. It's patience dressed as restraint. But let's not sugarcoat it. Being observant isn't a passive game. It's predatory. You're not just watching to admire. You're watching to exploit. This is what most people are too scared to admit. They want intelligence to be noble. But in the real world, intelligence is a weapon, and weapons don't care about your feelings. You've seen this in corporate meetings. The quiet executive who nods along, lets the loud one dominate the room, then drops a single sentence that kills the deal or wins the board. That's not luck. That's calculated dominance. It's the battlefield of social chess, and high IQ players never play the first move. They let others waste theirs. Here's the irony: the world's most intelligent minds often look ordinary. But their habits, what they do every day, are anything but. You'll never catch them explaining their plans. You'll never hear them complain about how unfair things are. They don't ask for permission. They find leverage, and they pull it. You want to know if someone's truly intelligent? Watch how they respond to chaos. Do they panic, or do they pause? Pause is the signal of control. Let that sink in, because most people react. Intelligent people calculate. That's the beginning of power. And that's just the first habit. Let's talk about another uncomfortable truth. Intelligence doesn't equal kindness. You've been fed a lie. People like to romanticize intelligence as this inherently virtuous thing. They imagine the great minds of history. People like Caesar, Napoleon, even Shakespeare, were born with some noble, altruistic gene. But that's not what history teaches us, is it? No, what history teaches us is that the smartest individuals don't just outthink their enemies. They outplay them. They manipulate the rules. And the second habit of high IQ minds, they manipulate the environment to their advantage. Napoleon didn't conquer Europe because he was born with superior intellect. He dominated because he understood that power is a game of perception and circumstance. He knew that if you control how others see you, you control them. He never relied on brute force alone. He built a narrative. He painted himself as an unstoppable force, a hero of the revolution, even when he was just a man with a plan and a lot of ambition. You think people with high IQ are quiet and passive? No. They're quiet because they're too busy shaping the game behind the scenes. They don't just wait for opportunities. They create them. It's a simple fact. The smartest people manipulate systems to make them work in their favor. Think about the corporate world for a second. Do you know why certain CEOs seem to coast through their careers, while others struggle, even with more technical knowledge? It's because the high IQ CEO understands something vital: perception is reality. It's not enough to be good at your job. You need to make sure everyone else knows you're good at your job, even if you're not. Take a look at Kissinger. He wasn't the most talented diplomat in terms of raw knowledge or talent. But he understood this principle to the core. He mastered the art of diplomacy because he knew that the perception of power was often more important than actual power. His genius was in positioning himself as a trusted advisor, the keeper of secrets. And while others were focused on dealing with surface issues, Kissinger understood the deeper currents at play. The alliances, the fears, the hopes. He didn't just understand politics. He understood human nature. High IQ minds know how to manipulate the system, not necessarily by breaking the rules, but by bending them to their advantage. They understand that the most powerful positions are the ones that don't have to move. Think about that for a moment. It's not about running faster than everyone else. It's about positioning yourself so that when everyone else runs, they run into you. People love to talk about the self-made success story, but there's no such thing. Every success, no matter how independent it seems, is built on networks, on favors, on a system that favors certain people over others. And those who thrive are the ones who know how to position themselves inside the system, not fight it head-on. It's uncomfortable, right? We all want to believe that hard work and merit alone will get us ahead. But reality doesn't care about your beliefs. It only cares about who can influence the game. And the smartest minds know exactly how to stack the deck in their favor. The third habit. They understand that success is often about timing, not effort. Napoleon wasn't a genius because he conquered Europe in one battle. He was a genius because he understood when to strike. He didn't rush. He waited until the moment was right, then pounced. Think about it. He won victories by attacking at the most psychologically vulnerable points of his enemies. When they were overconfident, when they were distracted, when they underestimated him, timing is often more valuable than raw effort. You see this everywhere, in everything, in business, in politics, in relationships. The smartest people know when to act and when to sit still. They don't rush into things just to prove they're capable. They wait for the world to set the stage, and when the time comes, they strike. Why do most people fail? Because they don't understand timing. They're too eager to show off their intelligence, to prove their worth. They think hard work will win them the prize, but the world doesn't reward effort. It rewards the ability to understand the rhythm of events, to know when to act and when to wait. This, more than anything, is why high IQ people succeed. They are rarely the loudest in the room, but they are often the most strategic. They understand that the best chess players aren't those who make the most moves. They are the ones who know which move will lead to checkmate. We live in a world that rewards haste. Everyone is rushing, trying to prove themselves before it's too late. But the smartest minds are playing a different game. They're playing the long game, and they understand that success isn't just about how fast you move. It's about how well you anticipate the future and position yourself ahead of the pack. That's the third habit, and it's just as powerful as the first two. Let's talk about something else that makes most people uncomfortable. High IQ isn't about being good at everything. You've probably heard people say, "Oh, that person is just naturally talented at everything." Well, the truth is much darker and more calculating. The smartest people don't waste time being mediocre at a dozen things. They focus on one or two things, and they master them. And that's the fourth habit of high IQ minds. They know where to invest their energy, and they invest it wisely. This is where most people fail. They spread themselves too thin, trying to be all things to all people, dabbling in multiple pursuits, never excelling at any one thing. But the most intelligent minds, the real heavyweights, they choose their battles carefully. They find their niche, their one thing, and they double down on it. And they don't just learn it, they master it. Take Julius Caesar, for example. You think he was a jack of all trades? Hardly. He wasn't just an expert military strategist. He was an expert at people. He understood the psychology of power, and he honed that skill like a blade. Everything else, from his political maneuvering to his tactical brilliance, was a byproduct of his deep understanding of human nature. He didn't try to be everything. He focused on one thing, and that one thing became the bedrock of his empire. The smartest people, the ones with the real IQ, aren't trying to juggle dozens of goals. They're focused on perfecting the one thing that matters most at the moment. It's about commitment, not variety. It's about realizing that there are few things in life that will make you great, and the rest, well, they're distractions, and distractions are a luxury only fools can afford. So, what's the trap here? Why do so many people fall into the trap of trying to be well-rounded? Because it's easy, it's safe. The idea of being good at everything makes us feel like we're well equipped for the world. But in reality, it's a strategy that guarantees mediocrity. It keeps you on the surface, never diving deep enough to master anything. Think about how the smartest minds in business approach success. They don't chase the latest trend or try to keep up with every new innovation. They master one specific area, and they dominate it. This isn't just about knowledge, it's about focus. True mastery comes from hours of dedication to one craft. The high IQ individual knows that only in depth, in intense focus, will they achieve greatness. This, in itself, is a brutal facting. Most people don't make it because they can't stay focused. They can't say no to distractions. They can't resist the temptation to chase after every shiny object. They see someone else excelling in something, and suddenly, they think they should be doing it too. But that's the trap. You can't excel at everything. You need to decide, right now, what you will commit to, and you need to stick with it. You need to perfect it over and over until it's second nature. This brings us to the final habit of high IQ people, the one that makes them truly dangerous. They embrace discomfort. Now, when I say discomfort, I'm not talking about the kind of discomfort we all feel when we try something new or difficult. I'm talking about the deep, gnawing discomfort of knowing the truth. The uncomfortable truths that most people shy away from because they're too painful to accept. The smartest minds, whether they're running empires, negotiating world peace, or controlling entire industries, they thrive on discomfort. They understand that comfort is the enemy of growth, and that the world doesn't reward you for staying in your safe little bubble. The world rewards those who push themselves, who make hard choices, who face the uncomfortable truths about themselves, about others, and about the world. Take Napoleon again. The man understood discomfort. He didn't just lead his troops into battle. He led them into the most impossible situations, time and time again. Why? Because he understood that to truly lead, you must be willing to endure pain, hardship, and doubt, often more than anyone else. He didn't shy away from the hard choices. He embraced them. People who are truly intelligent have a unique relationship with discomfort. They understand that growth, success, and real power come from confronting the darkest, hardest aspects of reality. They're not afraid to make unpopular decisions. They're not afraid to push themselves beyond their limits, knowing full well that the greatest rewards lie on the other side of suffering. But this is what the average person doesn't understand. We're conditioned to seek comfort, to avoid pain, to look for the easy path. We think we'll find happiness in a stable job, in predictable routines. But the high IQ individual understands that real power lies in the willingness to sacrifice, to endure more, to push further than anyone else. It's not about surviving discomfort. It's about seeking it out, actively engaging with it. When others are retreating from difficulty, the high IQ mind is charging forward. They know that this is the only way to transform the mind, to sharpen the intellect, to grow in ways that others cannot even imagine. This is why high IQ people often seem ruthless, because they are. But it's not for the sake of cruelty. It's for the sake of survival. It's for the sake of becoming untouchable. So, there you have it. 4 habits that separate the truly intelligent from the rest. But if you think these habits are just about outsmarting everyone else, you've missed the point. It's not about being smarter than the next person. It's about understanding the game, mastering it, and playing it better than anyone else. It's about leveraging your mind as a tool of power. And once you understand that, you'll begin to see the world as the playground it truly is. Here's a final truth. Most people can't accepting high intelligence isolates you. Not because smart people are antisocial. Not because they don't want connection. But because the more clearly you see the world, the harder it is to relate to those who don't. This is the 5th habit of people with high IQ. They learn to be alone, and they use solitude as fuel. You've probably heard that. Great minds think alike. But that's a lie too. Great minds don't think alike. Great minds think alone. They pull away from the noise, from the crowds, from the emotional chaos of the masses. And in that silence, they process the world at a deeper level than most can imagine. Look at Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, commander of vast armies, bearer of unimaginable responsibility. What did he do in the quiet moments? He wrote, not for the public, not for legacy. He wrote to himself. His meditations weren't a performance. They were his way of staying sane in a world ruled by ambition, betrayal, and blood. Now think about that. The most powerful man in the world still needed solitude to understand himself. That's not weakness. That's clarity. That's strength. Because high IQ people know something the average person doesn't. You can't think clearly if you're always surrounded by noise. Most people are addicted to distraction, scrolling, gossip, validation. But intelligence thrives in isolation, in stillness. That's where insight lives. That's where the game slows down enough to see the angles others miss. And it's not just emperors. The most strategic minds in history, from Caesar to Kissinger to modern tech CEOs, share this in common: they disappear. They vanish when the crowd gets too loud. They retreat to read, to think, to plan. Not because they're shy, but because they understand this simple ruling: you cannot dominate the world until you've mastered your own mind. This is where real power comes from, not from charisma, not from luck, but from deep, private reflection, the kind no one sees, the kind that makes you dangerous. But here's the costing. When you start thinking like this, when you pull away and sharpen your mind, the world will misunderstand you. You'll be labeled cold, detached, maybe even arrogant. And that's fine. Because while they're busy trying to be liked, you're busy becoming untouchable. You want to know why most people fail to evolve intellectually after their 20s? It's because they stop spending time alone. They get absorbed into the collective thinking of their peers, their company, their culture. They lose the edge. They stop asking the hard questions. They stop studying the world like a strategist. They become what society wants: compliant, predictable, dull. But the high IQ individual, he resists that. She questions everything, not in a rebellious teenage way, but in a disciplined, strategic way. They sit alone, not to escape the world, but to understand it better than anyone else. So if you've ever felt like you're too much for the room, or that you see too many layers in a simple conversation, good. That's the mark of intelligence. But understand the cost. Because intelligence, true intelligence, is lonely. And that's not a flaw. That's the price of clarity. And with that comes the final insight. The thing no one tells you about intelligence. It's not about answers. It's about control. Control over your time. Control over your emotions. Control over your environment. Control over your impulses. A high IQ isn't some mental trophy. It's not a test score. It's a weapon. And like all weapons, it's only useful if you know how to wield it. You don't need to be the smartest person in the room. You just need to be the most strategic. And strategy comes not from knowing everything, but from knowing what matters most and having the discipline to act on it while others are distracted. That's what separates the truly intelligent from the rest. Not flashy brilliance, not constant chatter, but this ruthless internal focus, this ability to say, I know what I'm doing, and I don't need anyone's permission to do it. So don't waste your energy trying to impress. Don't dilute your power to fit in. Don't chase the applause. The smartest minds in history didn't wait for recognition. They built empires while others were still asking for approval. You want to know if you're one of them? Here's your test. Can you sit alone, think clearly, act decisively, and outmaneuver the world without ever raising your voice? If the answer is yes, then you don't just have a high IQ. You have something rarer. You have power, and that changes everything.